Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, I'm Jaron and I break down mobile development with Flutter in a simple, beginner-friendly way. So I was scrolling through Dribbble the other day and I stumbled on this really clean and modern UI that instantly caught my eye. And you already know what that means. We are gonna build it from scratch. If you're a beginner looking to level up your UI skills or just want a fun project to follow along, this one is for you. We'll walk through the entire process step by step, and by the end, you will have a beautiful UI you can be proud of. So grab your code editor, get comfortable, and make sure you stick around to the end. You don't want to miss this. Let's get right in. So just like we always do, we are going to start by breaking down this UI into smaller manageable widgets that we can easily represent in code. This approach is helpful, especially if you are new to Flutter, because it makes the whole process feel a lot less overwhelming. First of all, everything you see on this screen will sit inside a scaffold widget. That's the black background you see here. Inside this scaffold widget, we are going to have two main sections. We are going to have the AppBar, which is this section over here, and the body, which is everything else apart from the AppBar. So this is going to be our body. Now looking at the AppBar, it is made up of three key elements. So we have the leading widget, which is the back button you see over here. We have the title widget, and then we have the actions widget, which we are going to represent with our power or switch icon button on the right. And moving on to the body, we will wrap everything inside a scrollable widget because we want the user to be able to scroll when the contents don't fit the screen. The first thing inside our scrollable widget is going to be our image. So after this image, we are going to have a text and then a row which will align the icon, which is the battery icon, and then the percentage charged in a horizontal manner. The next thing after that is going to be our custom tab bar. We are going to create it from scratch without using any external packages. Next, we are going to have this analytics information over here, and we are going to build this using the Flutter FL package. So that's the breakdown for this UI. Now let's see it actually in code. So here in Android Studio, I have a simple Flutter app running, and in the home of my app, I'm rendering this homepage widget, which at the moment is showing just an empty scaffold. So we have a white background over here, and that is the scaffold widget you see here. So where do we start from? We are going to start by customizing our theme. This project or UI uses dark theme, so we are going to set up our dark theme. Now, in order to do that, within the material app, there is a way we can configure a dark theme, and all you do is you supply a dark theme data. So I'm going to pass in a dark theme, and the value is going to be theme data, and then we can say dot dark. And this is going to set up dark theme for us by default using the default Flutter theme. So this is going to set up a dark theme, and if you save, you should see a dark theme on your simulator. If you don't see it, what you can do is to change the theme mode from system, which is the default mode, into dark mode. So theme mode, the default is system. You can change it to theme mode .dark, and this will ensure that we are not using the light theme, which is the first theme that comes by default, but then we are using the dark theme, which we've set up. Now the next thing we want to do is to set up our text theme. So in dark mode, we can't just pass in any configuration to this theme data.dark, but then we can copy all the values within this dark mode and then change the ones we want to change. So the first thing I want to change is the color scheme. As you can see, we don't really have a color scheme over here, but I want to be consistent with this color scheme both in light mode and then dark mode. So I'm going to copy this color scheme we have over here and then paste it. That means we are going to use the same set of colors in both light mode and then dark mode. And the next thing I want us to do is to change up our text theme. And we don't have any text over here, but then when we finally put text on the screen, we want it to have a particular style, which is the font family. So let's open our terminal, and we are going to add the Google font dependency. So in order to do that, we are going to type flutter pub add and then the name of the dependency we want to add, in this case Google Fonts, and then hit enter. Now this is going to add Google Font dependency to your project if it is not already there. So we have Google Fonts added, and we can verify that from paspec.yaml. We can see that we have Google Fonts as well as the latest version over here. Within main.dat, how do we configure the Google Fonts? So within our dark theme, we have a field called text theme, and then we are going to pass in our text theme from Google Fonts. The type of text I want to use is the Lato text theme or the Lato text style. So I'm going to supply in Google Fonts.lato text theme like this, and this should work. Now we can't see anything on our screen, so we can't really tell if what we are doing is working. So back within the home page, I'm going to put within the body a text over here that says home page, and maybe change the style a bit so that we can see. Instead of colors the white, I'm just going to increase the font size maybe 30 and probably move one of these comments, right? And we realize that we have an issue. So our text is here, but then it is still dark. It is not respecting the fact that we are in dark mode, so the text has to be white. And how do we fix this? The way we fix this is that we have to pass in the text theme, which is the default text theme from the dark mode, into this Google Fonts.lato text theme. Now this is how it looks. You pass in theme data.dark.text theme like this, and now our text is going to be white on dark mode. When we go to light mode, this should also work as well. So light, but I realize that in light mode the text changes, which is the style, because we are not supplying any text theme for our light mode. So I'm going to quickly copy this and then paste it for the light mode as well. But then with that one, I can remove the theme data.dark text theme, because in light mode this works by default. Now this is what we need to set up our theme, which is text theme. Now next thing we are going to look at is our scaffold style. So if you look at the design again, realize that we have a much darker background compared to what we have over here. So how do we do that, or how do we change the background? I'm first going to try and get the color being used over here, and I have a tool on my Mac that allows me to do this. So I'm going to pick this color and then copy the hex value like this, and now I can use this color in Flutter. So how do I change the background color of the scaffold? Well, within the dark theme configuration, we can supply a scaffold background color, and I'm going to set it to the color I just copied by passing a color constructor like this, and then passing 0xff. After that, paste the color I just copied without this symbol. So when I save, we're going to have this dark background. Now that might be all, but then when we start working, we realize that our AppBar would be white, right? And we need to change the background color of our AppBar as well. So I wouldn't want us to go over that before we get back to the main.dat file again to change it. So what I'm going to do is that within the AppBar theme, which is the AppBar at the top, I want to change the background color, and I want to set the background color to the same color as the scaffold background color, so that they'll both have the same color. And if the color is dark, then the foreground color should be white. So foreground color is going to be white, and this should be it for our theming for now. So we can start working on our design. Now back on the home page, I'm going to remove this center widget from the body and then start with the AppBar. So we're going to pass in an AppBar widget, and within this AppBar, we want to put a title, which is the text in the middle, and then the text is going to say stats. So stats like this. Now the text is centered, but if you're on Android, the text is not going to be centered by default. In order to fix that, you can pass in a parameter called center title and set it to true. Note that this is the default value on iOS, that is why the text is centered. Now the next thing we are going to do is to supply our leading and then actions widgets. So the leading is the one to your left, and I'm going to pass in leading, which is going to be an icon button. On press, we are not going to do anything for now, so I'll put this function signature over here, and then the icon is going to be our back button icon. So this is a special widget in Flutter that renders the device back button. So on iOS is going to render this back button, on Android is going to render the Android specific back button. So this is what we have for now. The next thing we are going to add is our actions, which is the widgets to the right of the AppBar. So actions and then we need to pass in an icon button, and icon button, not just icon. And the icon we are looking for is not a search icon, but I'm looking for power settings new outlined, which is the icon I want to put to the right. So that completes it for our app bar. Now the next thing we are going to look at is the body, which is the everything else after the app bar. Now our body is going to start with a list view, as I explained in the introduction. Now this list view will have some children. Now within the children, this is where we are going to have our image. So the first thing we need over here is our image. We don't have the image over here yet, so I'm going to bring in the image, and I'll leave a link to the assets down the description. So I'm going to copy this image, and I'll come to my project and create a directory to keep that image. So in the root of my project, I'm going to create a new directory and call it assets. Now within this directory, I'm going to paste the asset I just copied, which is the satellite image, and this is the asset I have over here, which is the image we are going to use. Now we can't just use this image because we've added it to our project. We have to tell Flutter about it. So how do we do that? Come to your pubspec.yaml. You should see a lot of comments over here. I've cleaned mine. So under the asset section, uncomment this out and make sure that indexing is followed well. So I'm going to bring this back a bit so that it aligns with whatever is here, and then also comment this out, and I can remove this one. So this asset takes a list of directory or paths to images or any asset you want to use. In our case, it's going to be an image. So what I'm going to do is I have to provide the path, or the directory. So in our case, the directory is also called assets. Now if you call your directory images, or if it is nested like assets, images, svg, what have you, just have to follow the same structure. So for mine, it is just called assets. So I'm going to put assets here, and then /. Now / means I want to use everything within the asset directory, so including this satellite.png. Or you can be specific and then just add the satellite.png file over here. Anyone should work. I'm just going to do this, and I'll run flutter pub-get, and that should work. So back to home page, we can supply our image with image.assets, and then we need to pass in the path. So it's going to be assets/satellite.png, and when we save, we should have our satellite on the screen. The size would be okay for you, but for me, I want to change the size in a bit, the dimension of this image. I'm going to pass in a height of 350, and that should make it just a little bit smaller than the default size. Now after this, what we need next is the text. So if we come back to this design, we need this text, and then we need this row. So I'm going to put both of these in a column. Right, the reason why I'm going to put both of these in the column is because I want to center both of them. So if I center the whole column, then I don't have to center the text separately, and then also come to center the row separately, which is the container for these two widgets over here. So that's why I'm going to put them in a column. So just after the image, we are going to have a column with some children, and then the first child is going to be the text here that says LYN, I think KLHX-1, so something like this. Yeah, we can put any text you want there. And after that, we are going to have our row, so a row, and then with children, and we are going to have the battery icon. So I need to close this a bit here. Good. So after the text, we have row, horizontal row with children, and what we are looking for is our icon. So I'm going to use icon, not icon button, but an icon, and then we are looking for a battery percentage icon, which we can find from the Cupertino icons library. By default, it should be part of your project. You don't have to install anything. So Cupertino icons dot battery, we can choose any of them, 25%, and this should give us a battery icon. Now we can see that these texts are not centered, right? So how do we do that? And let me turn off this AI for now. So how do we center this? Well, within the column, things should be centered by default, right? So if you have an issue where you have a column and then a row, and the row is not centered, the issue is not actually from the column. right? The issue is from the row. This is because the row is taking up the full width available to it, right? And therefore it doesn't even feel centered because it's already full width. So how do we tell the row to not take the full width? Well, we use main axis size, and then we set it to main axis size dot min. Now this will tell the row that, hey, be as big as the content you have, right? Don't by default take up the entire width available to you. Just be as big as the children. So that's going to fix the centering for us. Now the next thing we need to look at is the typography and the color. So I'm going to use a lot of style from our text theme, which is the Google font text theme. Because of that, I'm going to create a variable to represent our theme. And if you are new to Flutter, this might feel a little bit complicated, but it actually isn't. I'm going to create a variable over here and then call it theme, and then set it to theme.offContext. Now this theme.offContext will give us access to all the configuration we have set up here, together with the default configuration that comes with Flutter theme. So if there's something over here we haven't overridden yet, it's going to give it a default from Flutter. Now from this theme, we can change the style for this text. So style, and they want to set it to our theme.text theme. So that's giving us access to the text theme we just set up. And we want a title large text style. So title large, which is the type of text style we want. And when I save, realize that this becomes a bit bigger, like a title. But that's not enough for us, right? We also want to make this bold. So how do we do that? We tell Flutter that he wants everything from the title large text style, but then we want to copy it and then modify the font weight, and then set the font weight to be bold. Now we do this, realize that we have a bold text over here, and that should fix our text. The next thing is the spacing issue. So these two are close to each other, which I don't really like. So there are two ways to do it. Either use a sizer box or use a padding. Any of them will work. So I can wrap this text in a padding widget and then tell it that, hey, you know what? I want to give padding only to the bottom side with a value of maybe 6, right? So that's going to give a space around this text, but then to the bottom, and then the provided value, which is 6. The same as putting a sizer box in between these two and then giving a value of 6. Any of them that works for you, that's fine. Now we are not done with our row yet. We need another text, which is to show the percentage charged. Now I'm going to put a text widget here, a text of 37% charge. Good. Now we need some space between these two widgets within the row. If you're in the latest version of Flutter, we have a spacing property now in the row, which we can use to space out all the widgets within the children. So this children, everything over here, we can use a spacing property to give consistent spacing between them. Now you can put a sizer box here, that would work. You can wrap the icon with a padding widget, that would work. There are so many ways to do these things in Flutter, but I'm going to go with a spacing and then provide a spacing of 6, and that is going to give equal space, which is put maybe a sizer box between these two widgets with a value of 6. Now we need to change the color of our battery icon to look like what we had in the UI. So if I bring back the reference image, we have this, and as you can see, the icons don't look the same. Yes, of course, you can get the icon, or you can get an icon package that will give it the exact icon, but I felt that wasn't really necessary. So I'm sticking with the default icons we have in Flutter. So over here, I'm going to change the color to a green one, colors.green, and that should be okay. Now, the next thing we want to work on is our tab bar. So if I bring the reference image up again, we have this custom tab bar here, right? And I want to show you guys how to build something custom like this. So first, let's create some space, and outside of this column, because the main purpose of this column was to center the two widgets over here, which is the text and then the row. So outside this column, we are going to have our custom tab bar. Good. So custom tab bar, but we need some space first, right? So if we just start writing, we realize that we don't have any space over here. Now I can wrap this column with a padding widget, but I want to show you guys how to size the box for spacing as well. So I'm going to just create a sizer box and give it a height, and the height is going to be the space I want. So a height of 20 will create a space of 20, and now we can start with our tab bar. If you are new to tabs in Flutter, I would recommend you read a little bit about it in the docs, but don't worry, this is going to be self-explanatory. In order to work with tabs, the easiest way you can go about it is to use a widget called default tab controller. So I'm going to use that widget, default tab controller, and this requires us to pass in the length, which is how many tabs do we want to have. We can put a hard coded value here, like we want to have maybe 6 tabs, and then we can put a child here. So the child is the widget that this default tab controller will control to act like a tab, right? I mean, it's kind of makes sense that way. So let's assume if you wrap this default tab controller around the scaffold, then you are telling that somewhere within your scaffold you are going to have a tab. That is all that it means. So it means that somewhere down within the child, it can be just a hierarchy, maybe a column, a row, a container, this, but somewhere deep down there's going to be a widget that is a tab, and then this default tab controller would make sure that that tab works correct. So we can put a length of 6 over here, but I want us to actually spell out the tabs we want. So let's create a variable to keep track of the tabs we actually want to display. I'm going to create a variable called tabs, and that's going to be a list of strings, and we are looking at a tab called everything, and then we want another one called pink success. I want another one to call latency. You can just put anything you want over here, uptime, and then bandwidth. So bandwidth like this. So these are the tabs we want to display. So back here, instead of just passing the length, we can do tabs.length, and with that one, when we update our list, we don't have to come to a default tab controller. Now the child for this tab is going to be a container widget. Now within this container, we are going to have our tab bar. So the tab bar is the default Flutter tab. So child is going to be a tab bar, and this tab bar requires us to pass a list of tabs. So the tab is the individual item you can click on, so which is what we've listed here. So within tabs, we can pass in a list of tab bars, which is tabs, what we call tabs, and I'm going to just loop over the items we have over here, and for each of them I'm going to create a tab, right? So I don't want to have like a list, then I'll say tab, then I'll put the name over here, everything. I think it's not like this. I think tab, child, text, everything, then just duplicate. No, I don't want to do that because I have a list. I'm going to loop over that list. So one way we can do that is to use a list.generate. You can use a map. There are so many ways to loop over things in that, so just go with the one that works for you. So list.generate, and then number of items we want to work with is tabs.length. The generator is the function that returns the UI we want. So I want to return a tab, right? Now I can access each tab from here just by creating a variable called tab and then set it to tabs index. So this is just going to give us each tab as it loops through the entire list of tabs we have. Now we can then supply the child here as a text and then put a tab there. So this is just going to give us a list of tabs. So everything, we can't really see it well, but then we are going to work on that. Everything, ping, latency, blah blah blah. For now it doesn't look good, but we are going to work on it. So what we want to work on next is to change the style. So for now we can't see anything, right? We want to at least see the text. So I'm going to first change the color of this label, which is the text we see over here. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set it to a white color, and I can do that from the tab bar. So tab bar, there is a property called label color, and then I can change that to colors.white. That's going to change the active label to a white color, which is what we actually want for now. Yeah, for now. One thing that I also want to change is the fact that the tabs feel collapsed, like latency, the Y is, the next line. So in order to fix that, we need to set a property called a scrollable and then set it to true. And this is going to fix this issue. Next thing we need to do is to set the tab alignment. So by default, the tab is not starting at the edge of the screen, which isn't what we want. We want the tab to start at the edge of the screen. So we are going to set a property called tab alignment and set it to tab alignment.start. And this is going to make sure that everything starts at the edge of the screen. Now, if you observe carefully, you realize that it is to the edge of the screen, too close to the screen. So how do we fix that? Well, we can come back to our list view and then make sure that we tell our list view, hey, you know what? We don't want any widget to touch to the edges of the screen. And how do we do that? With a padding widget. So padding, we pass in a padding property, and then we pass in the value we want. So all around I want a value of 16. That's going to make sure there is this little space created at the edge of the screen for all the widgets. Now back to our tabs, what we are going to do next is to remove this underline because we are creating a custom tab. Divider height, which is what we are looking for, and then we can set it to 0, and that's going to remove this underline. And now we are slowly getting there. Now the next thing we are going to do is to create a container around our tab. So if we bring the design here, realize that we have this container with a border around the tabs, and then the tabs fit within it perfectly. So that is the purpose for this container widget. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to apply some decorations, and then we are looking for box decoration, which is how you specifically like decorate a container. The first thing I'm going to do is to change the color of this container. Now the color is going to be a color from our theme. So I can just copy the color over here, which is this color. But then I feel like if you want to create for both light and then dark mode, then we have to depend on the theme because that will make our life less stressful. So I'm going to depend on our theme and then access the color scheme. So the color scheme is how you access all the colors defined in your theme configuration. The theme.color scheme, and I'm looking for a particular property called surface container. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to first copy it to dot with values. Values is I just want to change some part of this color. So values, and I'm going to change the alpha. Alpha is the opacity. Right? So at first it used to be dot with opacity, but then the latest version of Flutter changed it to dot with values. I need to pass in an opacity of 0.5. Now we see that this is still not the color we want, and this color would have worked best if we were in light mode. So how do we go about? Well, we will get back to this. So let's first continue to add the border radius, because if you look at the design, we have a little bit of roundness around this container. So border radius, and I'm going to supply border radius, which is a circular one, and then providing a value of 10. This is going to create this rounded shape for us. Now we don't want just the border radius, but I want to have a light border around this. So how do we work with that? Well, we are going to add a border and then providing a border.all. That means we want a light border around this, and the color, if I say right now, we wouldn't really see anything because of the color, and the color is going to be from our theme as well, and that's going to be theme.color scheme.outline variant, which is the type of color I want. Right, you can basically just copy any color and paste it here. That's with values, and then alpha is going to be 0.5 as well. So this is going to create this border we see around here. Right, now let's come and then work on the tab itself. So the next thing I want us to work on is our indicator, right? So the thing indicating what tab we are on. So we have this kind of like a violet underline over here, which is what I want us to change. So in order to change that indicator within the tab bar, we have something we call indicator, and this thing takes a decoration. Right, so a way you can change the indicator is to use a decoration. Now I'm going to use box decoration. And then I'm going to see that, first I want the border radius of this indicator to be circular, border radius dot circular, then passing a value of like 6. But then one thing that we can also do is to change the color, and then change the color to something like white. Good. When we change the color to white, this is going to give us this indicator that we see over here, which is this white thing over here, or indicating which tab is currently active. Now we can't really see our text, right, because the label color we supplied is just white, which is wrong. White on white doesn't look good, right? So what do you want to do? We want to supply a custom color, but then in light mode we want to supply a different color that we've not yet defined. So it's very simple. We just need to change our label color to the label color of this design, and I can copy this color, and it's something like 2C. I'm going to copy this. So label color is not going to be just colors.white. It's going to be color 0xff. Then paste this, remove this symbol. Right, so this looks okay. We are getting there slowly. Now the next issue we have is with our padding. So realize that the tabs don't have any padding within them. Now how do we fix that? In order to fix that, we will come to the tab itself over here and then wrap the text with padding. So wrap this text with a padding widget, and I want to have padding only on the horizontal axis, which is left and right side. So I can use edge insert or symmetric, which will allow me to pass padding in a certain direction. So horizontal and then pass the value of 10. This is going to create some kind of padding within this container. Realize that we also don't have padding within this main container, right? So how do we fix that as well? Well, within this container, we can pass in padding. So padding, and then we are going to pass in a value of vertical. So on the vertical axis, we want a padding of 4. That's going to create this space at the top, the bottom, and then on the horizontal axis, we want a padding of 6. That's going to create more space over here. So the next thing I want us to work on is the sizing of this tab bar. Now, if you look at the UI, you realize that this tab bar we have over here is much smaller than what we have. So how do we fix that? We can come to this tab and then set a fixed height for it. So I'm going to set a height with a value of 35, and that's going to make this much smaller, right? And now we are almost there. We are almost there. The only issue we have is our color and then a little bit of padding to the left, which we are going to fix. Now the next thing I want us to look at is why our colors are not showing up the way we expect, right? And what I can see, or what I feel, is that these colors are being generated for light mode instead of dark mode. So let's come back to our theme, and from the color scheme over here, I realized that we did not pass the brightness for the generation. So we need to pass in brightness and then tell this color scheme that it should be generated in the dark color space. And that will make sure that the colors generated are indeed the dark theme colors using this deep purple color. So that should fix the issue with the colors. Now the next thing I want us to fix is the spacing at the left of this container. So how do we fix that? Well, we need to change the tab indicator type or indicator size, I think. So I think it's called indicator size. Then we need to change it to tab indicator size dot tab. This is going to make sure that the width of this tab is consistent. So it is big and then it fits the text, right? So everything we have over here, the width is consistent, and that is going to make sure that it comes to the edge of this container. And now that is when our padding which we set up works, because without this padding, they realize that everything just touches the edge of the container. If that's the design you want, then that's fine. But I want to keep a small padding around the tab within this container. And now we have our tabs. They look good, and that is it. That's how to create a custom tab in Flutter. If you don't understand any parts of this tab creation process, I would recommend you watch this section over again. We have a little issue, which is in light mode, most of the colors are going to really look like we want them to look. So if we come to theme mode.light and we save, realize that this color isn't really looking the way we want it to look. So what do we do? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to change our indicator, which is this white background color, depending on the theme we are in. So we need to access the theme mode we are currently in and then change the indicator color, which is this color over here. And how do we access that? I'm going to create a variable over here for brightness. Brightness, and that is going to be theme.brightness of context, right? That's what I'm looking for. So within the indicator, we are not going to just make sure it is white. No, we are going to only make sure it's white on dark mode. So we are going to check if brightness dot if brightness, not dot, but if the brightness itself is equal to brightness dot dark, then we want it to be a white color. Else we want it to be a special color from our theme, and that is called inverse surface, right? So that is going to give us this color, which is a nice color for the light mode. But then we have another issue. The issue is that because we have a fixed color for our text, this is not visible. So then how do we also change that? So we have to come here to where we have our text, which is the label color, and then change it from a fixed color to a white color when we are in light mode. So how do we do that? Just like we did for the indicator color, we are going to check if our brightness is equal to brightness.dark. If that is the case, then we want to use this color. Else we want to use a white color. That's going to make sure that on light mode our label color is white, and then on dark mode, so if we come here and then we change the mode to dark, then we have this nice color. Now I'm going to remove this theme mode property because by default it is theme mode.system, and I can change my theme mode using a shortcut. So shift command A, and that's going to toggle between the theme mode on iOS simulator. Right? If you're on Android, you can just stick with the theme mode property, or you can change the theme mode on the system of the device. So back to our home page, we are done with our tab design. The next thing we are going to look at is the graph. So if I bring up the design, we have a little graph over here, which is what we want to design. Before the graph, we have this data over here before the actual graph. So let's try to design this first before we move on to the graph. So within the default tab controller, instead of having a child being a container, we are going to put this in a column like this. Then the tab itself, tab toggles, will be this container, and you can extract this to its own separate widget, but I'm just going to collapse it for now. And then we have the tab body. So the tab body is the data that will be displayed based on the tab that's active. So if it is Spring Success, what data do you want to show? Latency, what data do you want to show? So with that, we are going to have a tab bar view, and that is how you do it. So tab bar view is the output for the data you want to show when a tab is active. And because we are working within a scrollable widget, and the tab bar view tries to, fit a specific dimension, if you just put a tab bar view over here, you are going to have issues. The first issue is that the number of children must match the number of children we have, which is the tabs.length. But let's assume that children, we are going to fix that by just looping over this. So let's generate tabs.length, and then know that for each tab we are going to return maybe a text that says maybe tab index +1. So tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. Now if I open my console, there is an error in my console. As you can see, so much error. The issue is that this needs to be constrained. In a scrollable widget, the tab bar view needs to be constrained. So we need to wrap this in a sizer box and then give it a fixed dimension. So I'm going to give it a height of 380, and I can give it any height you want. Right? I feel like the space at the bottom over here and the data I want to put there, a value of 380 will fit that data. So 380 like this, and now the error, I shouldn't have any error. This is from the previous console. If I clean this, I obviously shouldn't have any error. Right? So I can see tab 3, I can see tab 2, I can see tab 1. So whatever data you want to show for each tab, you can access it over here, which is a custom widget or what have you. Just access it using maybe the index or the name, the ID, what have you, and just put that widget down here. Unfortunately for us, we are just going to maintain the same widget for this UI. So let's quickly come up with this widget. The first thing I want us to do is to give some space between the tab toggle and then the tab itself. And because the toggle was built using a container, we have a margin property that we can use, and container margin, and this margin is just like putting a sizer box below the container. So edge inside the only, I want to give a margin bottom 20, right? So I think that would look good. That's going to push everything to the bottom by 20. Now the next thing I want us to do is to create the row which we saw. So this particular row. So within this list.generate, we are going to first have a column, because we are going to have like the data which is in the row and the actual graph. So those things are going to be put in a column with children, and then we are going to have something like the header, and then we have the actual graph. So graph like this. So the header will be put in a row. So we have like a row here with some children, and then we are going to have an icon. Now unfortunately I couldn't find an icon for this small thing over here. Right, so I use the Cupertino activity indicator widget, which is the loading widget on iOS, and then I pause the animation. So this is what we are going to have. Then maybe pause the animation, so we can set animating to false. That is going to give us something with spikes. Or you can create this widgets from scratch if you want to. I just didn't do that. Now next to the Cupertino, we want to have a text. So a text will show some kind of a percentage, 99.77% like this. And now we can have some space between these two. And over here, I'm going to the sizer box to create a space. Give it a width of 8. Right, so that's going to create some space, and then change the style for this text. So I'm going to, for my theme title large text style, and I want to change everything, not everything, but then just the font weight to be bold. Font weight to be bold. That's going to create this. Now after this, what I want is to push everything, like create a very big gap here, and then put the rest of the widgets to the right. So in order to do that, I'm just going to the spacer widget. And the spacer widget is just going to create a very big gap between two contents in a row or a column. So I have a spacer widget here, and now I can put the icon we saw there, which is the dot icon. So we call that icon icons.circle, and that's going to give us a dot like this. It is too huge, so we can change the size to like 12, and that should look a bit good. So that's the dot over here, and then we can put a text close to it. So we can put a text like recent, and now let's change the style for our text. So I want to use text title medium, so text theme, and then I'm looking for title medium, and that should be good. Let's also put some space there. So I'm going to copy this same sizer box, then put it between the icon and then the text, so we have something like this. And now let's have the same copy, right, by this time around with a much smaller text. So I'm going to copy this text and then icon, duplicate it, right, and then create some space between the two. So create a space between this, the first recent, and then the second recent. So space sizer box, give it a width of 20 to create a bigger space than the first one, so that they are distinct. And now we can change the text from recent to previous like this, and also change it to a different icon. So icon.circle outline like this. Now the color is a bit different. If you look at the UI very well, you'll realize that not this, whereas the color is a bit gray for the previous version. So I'm going to change the color for the icon. So color theme dot color scheme, and I'm looking for the outline color scheme. So that's going to give like a gray color, right? So you can just put colors.gray here if you prefer to hard code your colors. But then I'm just going to copy this and then paste the same way. So instead of color like this, I'm going to change everything, copy it, paste the color. Right, so they are going to be gray, both the icon and then the text, they are going to be gray. Now that's going to be it for the top part, and then we have space over here for the bottom part, which is the actual graph. Now in order to build this actual graph, we are going to use a separate widget. So I'm going to create a new file and then call it analytics chart, and this is going to be a stateless widget, analytics chart. And then for now, I'm just going to return a text that says analytics chart, and make sure that you import the necessary things I need. Or close this. And now within the home page, I'm going to render the analytics chart widget, which is going to sit very close to, the header. So I want to give a little bit of space. I can use sizer box, but this time I'm just going to use padding, right? So you can just put a sizer box over here, just below the row to create that space. But I'm going to use a padding widget, wrap the row with a padding, and give it a padding of only bottom. And then I'm going to put a big value here, so like 30. So that's going to create a space. Now, I want the analytics chart to take up the remaining space of this 380. So we have a sizer box, a height of 380. It could be 400, it could be any height you want. But then after laying out the header part, which is what you see over here, I want the analytics chart to take all the available space. And how do we do that in Flutter? We use a widget called expanded. So this is going to take the remaining space, which is going to be something like maybe 340 or 320. I'm not really sure about that. Now we can start working on this analytics chart widget. And in order to build this analytics page, we are going to use the FL chart library. So come to your terminal and then type flutter pub add FL chart. And you can look this up on maybe pub.dev, anywhere you want to confirm. So FL chart, and then you add the latest version of FL chart to our dependency, which is the library I want to use to draw the graph. I'm going to go over this a bit quicker because there's a lot of configuration if you're not familiar with FL charts. So the first thing we are looking for is I want to draw a line chart, like a line graph. So I'm going to use the line chart widget, and it needs some kind of data. The data it needs is the line chart data. Now when I save this, we are seeing some random dots on the screen, which are just like labeling. So 0 at the top, 0 down here, 0 here, 0 here, just some random labels. The first configuration we want to do is with a grid. We want to show some kind of lines on this chart. Just like in the UI, we have some kind of lines here. So we have some lines over here. We can see horizontal lines going through the graph. So we want to create something like that within FL charts. And what we are going to do is that there is a property called grid data. We are going to pass in FL grid data. And when we pass in FL grid data, we have to tell FL chart that hey, we want to show this grid. So we set show to true, and we still can't see anything, but that's not a big deal. What we are going to do is that we are going to pass in a function called get draw when horizontal line, right? And then we are going to return something we call FL line. Now when I save this, we still don't see anything yet because there's still more configuration that we need to do. So first we need to add some kind of stroke width over here, and then we need to change the color. And I am again going to access colors from my theme. So I'm going to create a variable for theme.off context like this, and then set the color to be theme.colorscheme.outline, and then I'm going to change the opacity to 0.3, right? And we still can't see anything yet. So we need to say that we want to have some kind of intervals. So horizontal, not that please. So horizontal interval, give it a value of 10, and then draw vertical line, give it a value of false, and that's going to be our configuration for our grid, right? We still can't see our grid, which is a bit surprising, but then it makes sense, right? So we are going to get working on our grid. The next thing I want us to look at is the 0 we are seeing over here, right? So we don't want to see 0 over there, so we can do a lot of configuration with our title, right? And after this, we are going to have something we call titles data, which is FL titles data. And then we want to say that show to be true because we want to show some title data. On the right side, which is right titles, we want to tell FL that we don't want to show that. So side titles, side titles like this, show titles false. And that's going to remove the title on the left. On the right. So it's kind of like dig deep to find the configuration you are looking for. At the top, we also want to do the same thing. So I'm going to duplicate this and then change it to top. And I don't show the one at the top as well. On the bottom, I don't want to show the one at the bottom as well. So that's going to, disappear. On the left, this is the only one I want to show per our design. I want to only have this left titles. So I'm going to have an axis title, and then I'll have a side titles, which is just like any of them, side titles. And then this time around, we are going to show titles to be true. And we want to have an interval. So interval is more like, as you can see from this design, we have 40, 60, 80, 100. We want to have an interval of 20. Now we still can't see anything because there is no dimension, and of course we can't even see our grid. I just remembered there is no dimension. So we need to have a dimension for, the boundaries of our charts. In order to do that, we are going to skip ahead of ourselves a little bit and then come here. I'm going to say that the minimum on the y-axis is going to be 40 because that's what we see from our UI. The maximum is going to be 100. And now immediately I do that, we have this grid. Yes, and that was the reason why we were not seeing our grid, because we didn't have any dimension, and I forgot about that. And we are also going to have one on the x-axis, so min x is going to be 0, and then the maximum x, I just set it to 19 because I used some random data, so 19 was okay for it. And then we can come back to our left axis to customize it. What we want to do is that we want to reserve size 40. So over here, can add another property called reserved size 40. That means that we want to just start from the 40. And Unfortunately, we see that our title is getting clipped, which is the fault over here. We are going to work on that. I wanted to change the styling for this to look exactly like the UI we had. So it's a bit gray with the percentage value. In order to change that, there is a function you can use. So get titles widgets, and this is going to return something like value. And this is the value you are looking for. So I'm going to return the text, a widget, and I want to put the value over here, but with a percentage. Value is a double, but I want to have integers. I don't have any 0.0 for the values. So I'm going to do value dot to integer, so to int. I'm going to add a percent symbol as well. So we are going to have 100, 80%, 60%, 40%, and then we can change the style from here. So from here, I'm going to set the style to theme, the text theme, the body medium, copy width, and then color. Is going to be our gray color, which is theme.colorscheme.outline. This is our gray color, and this is optional, so like this. Now we're going to have this gray color, right? Good. Now that is going to be it for our titles. Now when it comes to border, right? So border data, there's a field over here that we can customize, and then it's called border data, and then we can say FL border data show to be false. So by default, there is this kind of a thin border around the chart, and then we can disable that using this border data field. Now the last thing is line bars data, so which is the actual graph we want to plot, so XY coordinates, and then we can set that using the lines bars data. So over here we need to provide a list of like plots, right? And I'm going to provide a first one, which is going to be line chart bar data, like this. You can provide multiple, so if you want to have multiple lines on the graph, just like we have over here. So in our design, we have two lines. We have this white one, and then we have this pink dotted line on the same graph. So this lines line bars data property allows us to customize that. Now within this, we have something we call spots. Now the spots are the actual coordinates. So for the first one, I'm just going to copy them in because they are a bit many. So I'll copy this here, and that's going to create this. So these are like x, y coordinates. So on the x-axis, when it's this, put this value there, and so y-axis, when it's this, put this value there. So we said that our maximum is going to be 19, so you see that we have maximum for 19 over here. The maximum for y is going to be 100. We are getting to 89 over here, so that is where we have this particular point. Now there are other things that we can configure within this line chart bar data apart from the spots. So first, we can set a property which is curved to true. That make it a bit curvy. Then we can also customize the curve smoothness. I found that 0.2 looked good for me. We can change the color. So color is going to be theme.colorscheme.inverse surface, and that is going to be the color for the dots, the line, right? A couple of things that we can also change. So bar width, and put that to 3, and then that's going to deepen the bar a bit, increase the width. We have a stroke cap around. I'm just going to copy the remaining ones in. They're just configuration that you can set to your taste. So a stroke cap round, that is going to be true. Then the dot data, which is the actual dot, we set that to false, which we don't want to show. Then below bar data, which is what is below this, right? Below this graph. And then we say that we want it to be some kind of, this box over here, but then the color is going to be inverse surface. And then with a little bit of opacity, which gives us this kind of like a dark color, black color, right? And the inverse surface is more like, what looks good on top of a background color, right? So take surface for a background color, and then inverse surface is more like what will be on top of that background color. So that's going to be it for the first one, which is this. Now for the second one, because I don't want to make this video very lengthy, I'm just going to copy it in, but it's the same as the first one with just a little bit of configuration. So we still have the spot, which is the values we want to have, right? The XY axis. We have a curve, we set to false, color false, bar width 0, dot data. We do some kind of painting, which is like a little bit of dots. Then below bar data, which is this thing, we say we don't want to show that. When we save, we are going to have this graph over here. And that's going to be it for the graph. If you want to fix the issue with the spacing, we can add padding button to this whole column within the tab bar view. So I'm just going to wrap padding around and then give it a padding of only bottom, the value of around maybe 10, and that's going to fix this so that you can at least see this. Now we can also wrap our whole body with a widget called safe area, right? And that's going to fix things much better. Right, so there's going to be enough space at the bottom over here. That is this UI, Internet Service Provider App UI, which I found on Dribbble. And now let's look at how it looks in light mode. So light mode, and it is easier to build UIs this way because we are dependent on our team, and then we can configure everything specifically from our team without stressing much. So thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and if you want to see more content like this, let me know in the comment section and then I'll deliver it. Until next time, bye.